It looks like the Shadow Man is behind you.
Yeah. The Slenderman is behind you in the corner. Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Fossores Chapter House Podcast, and this season, of course, is a joint season with FAITH RX, where we talk about the spirituality of the human body. I'm Dave, this is my co-host Liz Kirchmeier, the CEO of FAITH RX, and we're joined today by my friend Dan Passini. Dan, why don't you tell everybody, hey, and let us know where your interest in spirituality and fitness has come from.
So my name is Daniel Passini. I have been a pastor and a gym owner and a trainer and a coach, kind of sometimes one at a time, sometimes both at a time. And my wife and I actually owned a gym for about 5 years. That was a kind of a faith-based group exercise, group fitness. We weren't CrossFit affiliated or FAITH RX affiliated. We were just kind of our own independent gym.
So now immediately, I have a question already. What makes a gym Christian? Like, how do you do Christian push-ups?
Of course, we put a cross on our logo, so that made it Christian. I mean,
Yeah. Whoa.
now looking back, I'm like we did not have to do that, but
Oh, you did do that. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Good. Well, don't be ashamed.
that was back in my I don't even know what you'd call it days of like hardcore, like I have a cross on everything, or it's not affiliated with Jesus. But no, we got to pray with clients, and actually we started our gym at the same time that we were planting a church with some friends. And so we shared a space with the church offices and the gym facility. And so that way we could both keep our costs low. But in our gym, we got to pray with clients, and we would have Bible studies and devotionals. I mean, I remember having communion over a plyometric box, and we had like crackers and juice and stuff on the box, and I have a picture of it somewhere. And so it's like rogue communion. And so but yeah, we did all sorts of stuff as a church and as a gym. And so I guess does that answer the question of what made it a faith-based gym?
Sure. Yeah, using insider language temporarily, were you more concerned with evangelism or discipleship or both? Or were you trying to lead people to Jesus or deepen people's experience of Jesus, or any and all of the above?
Say, I guess any and all of the above. Mainly, like, we didn't try to preach to anybody or like try to force anything on anybody. But if people came in, I mean, they knew we were affiliated with Christianity, and so that was the fun part, is that we got to pray with people. We got to see one lady, she got healed of these seizures from this issue with her brain, that just from coming to our gym. And not just from coming to our gym, but we got to pray for her, and she was a member at our gym. And so things like that. And then we got to do some counseling and coaching with people with marital issues and different things. And so it opened a lot of doors without it being, I guess, church per se.
So now, you guys did a lot with bodybuilding in particular. I mean, I think Amber got her pro card, right? Did you get your pro card too? Did you go through and do
that? I tried. I did one show, and then I was prepping for my second natural bodybuilding show, and I herniated a disc in my neck, like, I think I was like 6 or 8 weeks into my prep. And so I went like back down to not being able to do anything for about 12 weeks. And then whenever I went back, I was like trying to chest press like 10-pound dumbbells and like shaking like this because I had no like neuromuscular control. And so I did end up getting back on the stage a second time, but it was more of like just that conquering myself.
To prove you could do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just that I could do it. And so, but yeah, and my wife is awesome. She's the pro. I mean, she's done 9 or 10 shows, I think. And she got her pro card at her last show. She's the cool one. I'm just here. I carry her purse.
Yeah. And you guys just had a baby, right? Like just what? Not even 2 months, right?
Yeah, he's 4 weeks old on this last Saturday, so 4 weeks. Tomorrow he'll be exactly 1 month.
Feeding him full of protein powder already, and you get him on the.
He's already on a workout regimen. I mean, he's doing leg presses and like he's getting after it, man.
Yeah. Where did where did you feel like God showed up for you during the process of your injury and your recovery, or did you feel like God showed up for you?
I don't know. That was like almost 15 years ago. It's hard to remember.
Wow.
It was I don't know. I know it was a humbling experience because it got to that point. I mean, I think you both have had neck injuries, right?
Yeah. What a club we're in right now. Yeah. Like we're in the broken neck club. Yeah.
It was like, I wasn't as hardcore and like break my neck like you guys, but like it was herniated, and it was that you go over a bump driving down the street, and it was just this excruciating pain down the side of my body, and it was this experience of like not being able to sleep, not being able to do anything, and going from using 100+ pound dumbbells to like not being able to stabilize 10-pound dumbbells, and at that time I was much younger, and I was a top trainer at the gym that I worked at, and I was like I was one of the stronger guys in our gym and in our like group of trainers, and so it was very humbling to like now be at that level where it's like I can't even stabilize these 10-pound dumbbells and my arms are like shaking on me and I can't move. And so it was this, I think that might have been what God was trying to do, like, hey, like pride comes before the fall. And so it was that that humbling experience, but it was that kind of rebuilding, kind of foundational movements, foundational stability, and neuromuscular control that I'd kind of gone lax on. And so I think that was part of that process. Like God was like, hey, let's kind of rebuild a better foundation to build up on. And so
I remember, so Liz broke her neck before I broke mine, and I remember we were friends when it happened, and I remember going like, you can't break your neck and live. I've seen kung fu movies. I know when the good guy breaks the bad guy's neck, that's the end of the movie. It's over. And Liz, you kept training, you kept showing up to the gym. You were smart and you were judicious about it. But I just remember being so stunned that somebody could break their neck and not stop living. I mean, both literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I think the kung fu movies, they didn't have Jesus. Maybe that's why. I don't know.
And I don't think you're supposed to say not living. You're supposed to say like unalive now. Isn't that the new thing? Like you're going to be unalived.
Well, what did you learn through yours? I don't think I've ever asked you that question. What did you learn through the process of your neck-breaking fiasco?
Wow, that brings up a lot of emotions. I think that for me, I had so much of my identity wrapped up in who I was as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, an athlete, a coach. And so when all of a sudden the possibility of all of that being gone, I was like, wow, what is my actual identity? What am I if I don't have all of this, you know? And so I went through a phase of like, F it. I was going to find a nicer way to say that. Just a different way of like, just realizing who I was and all of the things that I had to still offer and the work I could still do. And I think that's when I really started shifting my mindset to none of these things are gifts of mine. They're not mine. They're not just for me either. And so I think going from that kind of like, you're never going to be able to compete in this again. And still to this day, it does bother me a bit, but man, I also like if those things did not happen, if breaking my neck did not happen, it would be hard to imagine that I would be doing the things that I'm doing now. So, yeah.
I remember when I broke my neck and I was going through my rehab and trying to come back to the gym owner where I was going at the time, Mark Jones, you know, he was so good and so supportive to me, and he kept saying things to my family like, man, I'm just so impressed with Dave, he's here every day, he's still showing up. And my family were like, well, why wouldn't you expect him to do that? Things like this don't bother Dave. Dave's not troubled by these things. He knows who he is. Meanwhile, I'm like, Dave is absolutely troubled. Dave is 10,000 out of 10 troubled. Please stop proclaiming my prophetic miracle, because I'm not living in the miracle. I'm traumatized. I'm like, I don't want to, I don't want to pretend that this was easy somehow, because for me that was, I felt much more because yours happened while you were training. Mm-hmm. Mine happened from years ago, an old rugby injury that then, kind of got re-injured in a fluke. So I really felt like I was the butt of God's joke. I was, and I was trying to reconcile all these things that I was doing to try and serve and honor the Lord. And it was those very things that were now compromised by my injury. Mm. And then it took a long time for my injury to get diagnosed properly, and I couldn't get any help. And I just felt completely abandoned by God. Almost like I was a butterfly in the little display case. I'd just been pinned to the wall. And that footprints poem, that really famous poem, about there's 2 sets of footprints throughout my life, then there was only one, and where were you, Lord? I needed you. And he's like, I carried you. There are no footprints in my poem. There are 0 footprints. There's me on my face in the dirt, eating sand, looking for the Father, not able to see him. Mm-hmm. And the comfort that I took, the thing that continues to be really helpful for me, is realizing I got a mouthful of dirt, but when I look over, I see Jesus on his face, and he's dying too. Mm-hmm. And at least we're dying together. And that is really helpful for me, because I go, if I got to go through anything, I want to go through it with Jesus. Yeah. And the fact that he wasn't giving up meant that I didn't need to give up. And maybe neither one of us are going to make any footprints ever again. But if I got him, that's all I want. That's all I got. That's all I want. And the footprints. I mean, screw the footprints. Yeah. Well, now, Dan, you've done a lot of work in techno-humanism, and that was a big feature of your doctoral work. I mean, you and I did some of that stuff together, and I was privileged to serve as one of your advisors there at the very end. And so, tell us a little bit about techno-humanism, about new people, cybernetics, and how you experience spirituality in that conversation, or where you think those things might go, and what the goods and bads might be.
Yeah. So I did a lot of research on like transhumanism and the body and kind of what it means to be human, kind of in this technological age, and really looking at transhumanism. A lot of people think, oh, we're going to be merged with robots, or we're going to be merged with machines, or we're going to upload to the cloud. But in reality, it's this huge spectrum. I mean, if you wear glasses, or if you have any sort of vaccine or injection of some sort, I mean, you've already augmented your body in some way.
Something's man-made at that point.
Yeah. If you're taking anything man-made, even if you're taking a multivitamin or a protein powder, if you're taking anything that's outside of, like, I guess, normal food, that's kind of that far end of the spectrum that's saying, hey, I'm at this end of being a transhumanist. But then, there's the people that are completely sold out to, like, with Ray Kurzweil, who's like, we're going to upload our consciousness to a computer by 2030 or 2035, or I can't remember what year he said. But there's that whole spectrum, and there's different branches there's like I guess, secular transhumanism, and then there's even like a Christian transhumanism and a Mormon transhumanism. So there's all these different sectors of it, and like even Christian transhumanism sees it as like our, I guess, God-given right to alter our bodies to help with kind of the flourishing of creation. And so I know you and I had this conversation about like living for a super long time. Like that's one of the things I say is I'm like, I want to live to 200. And so, some of that might be taking supplements or doing things. And I don't want to live to 200 on a computer, but I want to take care of my body, take care of my mind in a way that allows me to live to 200.
I'm hoping that somebody has the technological wherewithal to develop a a cigar supplement, so that when I smoke the cigar, I'm not reducing my life expectancy. I'm
It does the
enhancing
opposite
it.
of what it actually does.
Yeah, that's right. Because my joking number is always 127. I want to live to be 127. That's So I got a long way to go. I have 80 years remaining, and I intend to smoke a good cigar to the glory of God, like Charles Spurgeon, every day for the rest of my life. But the odds don't look good right now. there's still a lot of technology that has to happen for that to be on track.
Somebody needs a radical life extension cigar.
Yes, right. And you know what? We will give you free sponsorship on our podcast for life.
Yes.
For all 80 remaining years of my life, if that's your. Yeah. Now, how did you get so interested in this? Because of course, when you're doing your doctorate of ministry, there's lots of conversation about transhumanism, about genetics, robotics, nanotechnology, information technology. These are really common conversations, and especially as they pertain to the limits of human agency and eternity. But how did you really get tickled into it?
Well, I could give you some big fanciful story that I've thought about this for years and been studying it, but no. At the very first kickoff of the doctoral program, we were sitting there and Lynn was talking about something, and I asked him a question from a conversation that I had with a friend who's I can't remember what his PhD is in. It's in genomics. Genomics, genome and stuff. And we were talking about something with the body and technology and different things. And so I asked Lynn about something, and I don't even remember what the question was, but I asked him the question, and he's like, "That's exactly what the church needs to be talking about." And I was like, "Okay." And so I just right there, I was like, I'm going to change my, I was going to go on discipleship and talk about Jesus and discipleship and spiritual formation. And then I was like, okay, cool. And so I just started made this 180-degree turn and just went and started doing my research on technology. And that was 3 days into the program. And so.
Well, that's cool. See, you mentioned Ray Kurzweil earlier. His book Spiritual Machines came out in the early '90s. I mean, that was kind of his coming out book, and he primarily he was famous for designing synthesizers for Roland. And so I got a chance to meet him through a mutual friend that worked at Roland Japan, and he's a kook, and so I mean, he's a brilliant kook. Let me say that, but he's no fun. And so when I met him, he was taking he was living entirely off of pills. He was taking 600 pills a day, and he had and he had no body fat to him. I mean, he was super lean, but he was almost lifeless. And so seeing this person who wrote a book that I really enjoyed and really admired, and I got really excited about the Spiritual Machines. And then seeing how he lived, I thought, I don't want to live like this. And so really, my engagements with him early on really made me think about the difference between living longer and living better. And I thought, if he's going to live for 1,000 years, he's not going to have 100 good days, at least not in the way that I evaluate good days and bad days. I would rather live for 6 more months and have as many good days as possible than live for 600 more years, because it just doesn't look desirable. And so that really was one of the seminal moments in my own thinking about Jesus' promise in John 10 about having abundant life. And what does abundance entail? And the more and more you talk to Christian people about abundance, and its bedfellow prosperity, the great majority of Christian people are really nervous about those words, because we think it sounds like the prosperity gospel or the name it and claim it errors or the blab it and grab it group, But I think before you ever can deal with the errors or the excess, you got to start with what those words actually mean. And what does it mean to have abundant life? So I'm curious, do you have a functional definition of abundant life?
Hold on, let me get out my dictionary.
Well, I just yeah, right. What's abundant life mean to you?
I think it's about experiences and relationships and building it around that. Because you could say I have life, like you said, and not be. You can be alive and be lifeless, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of the who was it? The demoniac that lived out in the tombs and the caves outside of town. Yeah. and he was alive, but he had no life. He had no people around him. Like, and that's what we're here for, is to be in relationship with people. And if we're lonely, if we don't have any relationships, that's where kind of that depression comes in. That's where those issues, mental health issues come in. And so I think part of that abundant life is, can we find joy in the mundane? Can we find joy in relationships with people that are around us? Yeah, we're going to have hard relationships. We're going to have some tough times. But I mean, I think about it the other day, 2 or 3 days ago, I was taking my dog for a walk and I saw a Texas horned lizard. And like, for me, I'm 40 years old, but like a Texas horned lizard, every time I see one, I'm like giddy like a little kid.
Oh,
So
really?
I get it. I picked it up and there was a couple kids out playing basketball, and I was like, hey, y'all want to see a Texas horned lizard? And so I make the dog stay, and I go to take it over and I show it to them, and they're just like, oh, cool. I'm like what? Like, y'all, I was just blown away and just flabbergasted by the response. I'm like, it's such a cool creature. Like, they're endangered. You don't see them very often. Like, I mean, we definitely don't see them as much now as like whenever I was a kid, but just that finding joy in just everyday things, like finding joy in relationships, finding joy in a good meal or a good cigar, sitting down, having a good conversation, or what does Lynn call it? The sober mesa, and just sitting and having a conversation after a meal and just hanging out together, being with people. And I think that's part of that abundant life. I mean, yeah, we could get into like being generous and like giving and helping and serving and doing all that, like, but just all that, I guess, is entailed in relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, when growing up in church, I used to always hear people disparage the idea of being a good person or being a good human, and maybe that was just my own church, or maybe that was just, the peculiarity of how I grew up. But people would always sort of sneer at the concept of being a good person. Well, now I'm surrounded by so many Christians who are terrible people. It's quite heartbreaking. I go, how did we imagine that following Jesus shouldn't make you a good person? That where you love and serve others, where you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Like, how did we miss the love your neighbor as yourself part in pursuit of correct doctrine or dogma or whatever? So yeah, when you talk about playing with Texas horned lizards, and when you surreptitiously sneak in the little thing about getting your dog to stay, because that's not a thing any of the rest of us can do. But yeah, I go, yeah. I think that's. Yeah, I like what J.K. Rowling says. She goes, you want to lead a really good life or have really good lives, and I think that's at least a component of it. I do like Martin Seligman's definition of human flourishing. And we may have talked about this on the podcast before, so forgive me, anybody, if I'm repeating. And but he says what people really need to flourish is PERMA. It's an acronym, stands for positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and achievement. Positive emotion meaning like love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. Somebody, yeah. I don't know. I was gonna write it down though, and
trademark it.
Can you go back over those?
Yeah. Let me write those down. Yeah, and then engagement, which is what Michaeli Csikszentmihalyi articulated in his book Flow. Where you get into that flow state where you're totally caught up in doing something that the whole rest of the world just goes away. That's why, musicians, when we're practicing, or people who play chess, or mechanics, or jiu-jitsu instructors. Yeah, you get caught up in the flow, and that's all you're thinking about. So it's really hard to be depressed if you're in the flow. It's really hard to be anxious about the future if you're in the flow. It's really hard to be worried about money if you're in the flow. So that engagement is critical to human flourishing. And the healthy relationships, which I really appreciate that he didn't say family, because there's this whole fetishization of the family within church, and family is really important. I don't want to deconstruct family, but as much as family can be good, family can also be bad, and spending more time with your family because they're your family and you should can lead to some really destructive relationships and a lot of toxic especially environments.
If you have a rough, toxic family that has issues, it's like sometimes you're like, the best relationship you can have is to separate and like get away from family and build relationships with other people.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be in extreme, like in cases of abuse, but sometimes family patterns and family systems produce destructive behaviors, and people just slip into those things. And I mean, you can tell when people have been around their family and they come home looking like they've been attacked by wild raccoons. You go, listen, family is not the thing you should be focusing on right now. So I appreciate that Seligman sort of bypasses family. Family's great when it's great. When family's not great, when it's not great. And you can make a positive difference in your family to a point. But you're not the Lord and Savior of your family. Like you can't die on the cross for them. You can't fix everything for them. You got to just acknowledge there's some limits there, and sometimes the smart thing to do, sometimes the responsible thing to do is to create a little distance. And if you're a father or mother, maybe exposing your children to the toxic family environment in which you were raised is irresponsible. And starting a new family is better. Anyway, healthy relationships. Meaning, by which and he's a secular Jew, non-practicing Jew, but Seligman says meaning is something that persists long after you're gone. And that could be something like writing a really meaningful note to someone that they can hold on to in letter form for forever and ever. Or it could be something like starting a foundation or a scholarship fund. Or, of course, as followers of Jesus, we would say that anything that's got eternal significance is meaningful. And then achievement. And again, I really like that he talks about achievement, because I also grew up in a church culture that really downplayed achievement. Why would you want to play sports so that you could stand up on a podium and get glory for yourself when you're supposed to give all glory to God? Which I don't know why coming in second somehow gives God more glory, or coming in third or getting a participation ribbon somehow glorifies God. But that was certainly the shtick, and you still see it in worship culture today. Churches are very suspicious of things like guitar solos, because that guy's all about himself. He's a guitar player.
Showing off.
Yeah, he's a guitar player. What's he supposed to do? Play crappy guitar? Do you think Jesus likes crappy guitar? Like, come on! Like, if Jesus is up in the heavenly band and Stevie Ray Vaughan is there, is he just supposed to play chords? I mean, come on! So anyway, that's Seligman's perma thing, and yeah, that's right. It's just playing the Oompa band, or play all those old Hosanna Integrity songs, or shout to the Lord endlessly for.
You can only play hymns.
Yeah. But good luck finding one that's not, patriarchal or misogynistic or.
They've all got something wrong with them, so throw them all out.
Yeah. That's right. Oh man. So where do you see the conversation going next with transhumanism or techno-humanism? I mean, what do you think the things are that, like, what should an athlete be concerned about when it comes time to consider the limits of your human body? I mean, like, is steroids a part of this conversation? Or performance enhancements like, prosthetics? I mean, where's the line there?
Yeah, I think like performance enhancement. I mean, we already try to, I guess, test and keep people that are taking performance enhancement drugs, whether it's steroids or blood doping or whatever it is, like Tour de France with Lance Armstrong and all that whole debacle, or like whenever my wife and I did bodybuilding, we did natural bodybuilding, and you had to go do like a urinalysis, you had to go do a polygraph test, and so it was like you had to go through the ringer to get on stage. And I mean, there were still people that would beat it somehow, and there was guys up there, you're like, bro, how is this guy even on stage? Like, and so there's always going to be people that do that, and it's like, let's just hey, let's have baseball, and then let's have open baseball, or whatever you want to call it. Like, if you want to be souped up on something, like, let's see how far we can ding that ball. Like, let's see if we can knock it into the next county. Like, come in on whatever you want. Like, we don't care.
So why don't you think we have super baseball? Like, why not have hyper performance enhanced sports?
I think it's the stigma that, I mean, steroids are bad. Yeah, there's a lot of negative stuff that goes against it. There's a lot of negativity surrounding that. And it's like, we know, however, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's however many percent of athletes that take some sort of performance enhancing drugs. And like, let's just be open about it. Let's remove the stigma. And like I said, make a an open.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would advocate for Super Baseball or the Drug Olympics, only because I know myself well enough to know, like, I have zero discretion when it comes to that stuff. So if somebody said, "Hey, we haven't actually done all our clinical trials. This is pretty experimental. We did it to a bumblebee once, but we're pretty sure this will make you super freaking strong. You want to try it?" I'd be like, "Yeah, bro, shoot me up. This is a great idea. I'm all in." And I go, there's no end of people without ethical boundaries or breaks. Yeah. And when you skip all the appropriate testing, idiots like me are going to get in trouble and they're going to get hurt. Yeah. And what's even weirdest and worstest is history showed us that there's plenty of scientists willing to perform medical experiments on unwilling human trials. So then you get into a whole issue of
it would have to be another set of parameters. Right?
Yeah, right. There's going to have to be new rules, yeah. Right? Yeah, and that is fundamentally, I think the thing that makes sport so appealing is the existing boundaries. I mean, whether it's the out of bounds lines in team sports, soccer, tennis, whatever, or it's the gender lines. You really don't want LeBron James playing in the WNBA, or whether it's age and stage brackets, because what good is it if a 20-year-old competes against a bunch of 14-year-olds? I mean, all those boundaries are the things that make it fun and entertaining and engaging.
Kind of building off of that, it's that if anything goes, then eventually it's just going to get boring. But it's how can you excel and how can you do well? How can you do awesome within this box per se of limitations and boundaries? How can you do well in that? And we see from like LeBron James and Jordan and whoever. I mean, listen, I'm not really a sports guy. I don't really pay attention to a lot of sports.
LeBron Jordan and Michael James and yeah.
How can you just push the limits of your own physicality, of your own body, to get better to a point that you can excel above 95% of other people in your sport?
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that I think the rest of our lives would benefit from learning from sport. Like I wish, for example, our theological conversations followed the same sort of parameters as sport, so that you knew that when somebody weighed into a conversation, they'd at least had it once or twice before they jumped on and started posting it all over the internet very aggressively and vociferously. You wish people were thinking about how they get better so that they can be a better competitor, instead of just how they become more snarky or more mean or more nasty. I think about that in prayer too. I mean, running churches and running ministries for a long time, prayer is supposed to be the thing that humbles us and connects us meaningfully with God. But oftentimes prayer has a sociological element to it that gets a lot of ego in the way. And there's a lot of grandstanding in prayer, especially group prayer in churches, or public prayer, or prayer can sometimes be a mechanism of control. And so you go like, why are we not thinking about prayer the way we think about sports? That this is a thing I'm going to cultivate, and this is a thing I'm going to develop, and this is going to be a way in which I serve God with my ardor and my intention and my ambition. And I'm always going to recognize that there's a bajillion people out there who are way better than me, who are at a different level than me, but I want to see what I can do and live as a sacrifice to the Lord. And instead, prayer is all about, who gets a microphone or who gets the...
How can I pray for you and make a jab at you for something you did to me last week? God, please bless David so he doesn't cut me off in traffic anymore because he's a terrible driver.
Oh, I flipped somebody off in traffic today. Well, not in traffic. I was walking today, and this is great. It was like 1:00 in the afternoon in a little busy intersection in our little town. And I was walking. I was sweating like crazy. I was walking, and I was crossing the street. I jaywalk all the time, but this is the one time in my life that I didn't jaywalk. I waited at the crosswalk like a good little boy. The little man showed up and I start crossing the street, and somebody whips around the corner and stops like before they can hit me, kind of thing. And I was like, that was abrupt. And then guns it to try and get around me, and stops again like inches from my shoulder. And so I'm looking at them, and this chick rolls her window down and she cusses me out. She goes, I got the green light, you stupid. get out the way. And then she roared around in front of me, like my shirt is flapping in the breeze from her truck. And so I just looked after her and I gave her the single finger peace sign. And as I was doing this in the middle of the day in a busy intersection, I was like, all right, I still have some growing to do in my own journey of faith, and Jesus is ashamed of me right now. And
like sometimes it just comes out like a natural reaction. You're like, oh
yeah. I was like, anyway, I repent of that, and I repent of how good it felt, and I repent of how much I enjoy telling you what I got.
Yes, Niall tells it all right now.
Even my repentance is not yet fully genuine. It's
good doing it. It felt good.
Yeah.
Talking about it. It felt good telling the story again.
Listen, the bad things I don't want to do, I do. And the good things I want to do, I don't do.
It happens to all of us, man.
It is funny to imagine the Apostle Paul flipping off that lady too. Oh, man.
Jesus loves you.
Yeah, right.
You're number one.
Oh,
my peace sign is broken. Hold on.
Yeah. Now, what about in your training? How did you? Because I think this is an issue for a lot of people. How do you devote your training to God? How do you consider the development of your body and the curation of your spiritual temple? How do you bring God into that? How do you be aware of God in that? I mean, what do you do? What techniques do you use that help it be and feel and function spiritually?
I think it depends on the season, depends on the time. I've had times where I'm like, I'll put on worship music. Amber, my wife, always makes fun of me because whenever we owned our gym, like you could turn off every light in the building and there was one light in the back corner that would still stay on. And like she would go run home or go do something and she'd come back and I'm like in there, I've got all the lights off. I'm just under that one light and I'm like on the rower or something and I've just got worship music on the stereo and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. That's what I was in the mood to do. Just listen to worship music and sit in the corner. And then there's other times, of course, where I'm like listening to dubstep or rap or rock and roll or something but I mean, there's times like that, but just thinking about, our friend Sean's book, and like, that was mind blowing to me of thinking about the energetic capacity of our bodies. Like we use our energy to love people. We use our body to love people. And that, since I read that, that's changed my thinking about my body and my training of like, okay, man, like, I'm not going to lie, these last 4 weeks with having a baby and with trying to pack and get ready to move, like everything has gone downhill. And so I'm like, my energetic capacity to love people is very low right now. Like my energetic capacity to flip people off is pretty high because stress and no sleep. And so it's that was really life-changing for me of thinking about it that way, that I love people with my body and with my energy. And if I'm not getting good sleep, if I'm not eating well, I'm not able to love people fully like I'm supposed to. I remember reading an article about a lady that wasn't able to go on a missions trip because she was overweight and she couldn't fit in the seat in the airplane. And it was like this whole ordeal. And so it was this, just talking about being able to do the things that God wants us to do. And that was however many years ago that I read that, but that was a mental shift too of like, hey, I want to be physically fit to be able to do the things that whatever God calls me to. And like now, having most people like my age have kids that, like my sister has a kid that's graduating high school this year and she's younger than me. So everybody's got like these kids that are much older. And so they went through the toddler years, like in their 20s and maybe 30s. I'm 40 and just had my second kid. And so I'm like, I got to stay in shape to like keep up with these kids. Like, and my daughter's 5.5. And so it's like, I've got to stay healthy and take care of my body so that I can run with them and keep up with them. My daughter's always wanting to play chase or tag or run. And so I'm like, I've got to stay in shape so I can run with them and love them. And so that's kind of a huge roundabout answer, like vomit, but just thinking about my body in that capacity to do what God has called me to do. And so sometimes it's working out really hard. Sometimes it's that kind of slower paced, I don't know if intimate workout is the right word, but like but like that just more peaceful workout, I guess, and where it's slower pace and just kind of really thinking about it and kind of being almost in a prayerful meditative state during the workout. But taking the whole spectrum of it and say all of these go towards accomplishing this goal of being able to love people through the energetic capacity of my body.
Yeah. Yeah, you make a really great point that not all our workouts are high intensity and not all our workouts are Zen meditative, but all of those sort of different workout gears or workout, the spirit of each different workout. I mean, they all still glorify God and work together to cultivate our bodies. And I think about that a lot. I mean, sometimes I like to be, the angry, hyper-aggressive worker-outer, and sometimes I like to be, somebody who's just going at 60% because it's a recovery day, and so I want to go for a long paddle board or a bike ride or a long walk. And I did a 7-mile ruck march yesterday on Father's Day with my dog, it was great till my dog couldn't walk anymore. And so when I was wearing my stupid vest, my 50-pound vest, and then my dog laid down, I was like, I'm so thankful that I have energy in the tank to now carry my dog home. Because I remember years ago when I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would have just dragged on the dog or kicked on the dog or been mad or had to call my daughter, and who was at home sick, but she was the closest person with a car. So I was like, I'm so thankful that I don't have to... I can just love my dog and just enjoy my dog and carry my dog and love my daughter by not asking her to, get up out of bed. And I go like, I'm so glad that I've been taking care of myself well enough that in this moment, I don't have to get stressed, get angry, turn snarky, turn violent, become, quasi-abusive towards animals or any of the horrible things that younger, less fit me would have done.
And your dog is like a Chihuahua, right?
No, this is my favorite dog I've ever had. He's a hound, and he's super. He's just got a big personality. He's amazing. I think he used all his energy that day in making his ears move up and down at every possible animal as we were going through the woods. But it was pretty fun. Yeah, exactly. Oh man! So any tips or tricks that you'd give anybody who I imagine we got lots of people who are at the gym, 3-4 days a week, who are trying to take their fitness seriously, and they want to go to the next level in the cultivation of their body and their athletics. What would you tell them?
I guess a few things. One, consistency is key. I started working out, I think in like 7th, 8th grade. And that was back when I played football. I put on a uniform, but I was more like a bench warmer, but I still had to work out with the team. So that was when I started working out, was 7th, 8th, 9th grade football. And that was like the last time I played sports. But what I learned there in terms of exercise and just lifting stuck with me. And it's just been something that I've done consistently through my life. Yeah, there's been periods of time where it's like right now, my workouts are like once a week. And when I hurt my neck, it was like I didn't do anything for 12 weeks. And so there's seasons where it kind of ebbs and flows, but there's long term, there's that consistency of working out. And so it's easy to get discouraged by, oh, nothing changed this week. Oh man, this week's workouts were terrible. Oh, this, and so it's like easy to get discouraged and say, well, I don't, it's not working, I'm just going to quit. But long-term consistency, being active and moving and finding new novel ways to work out, going from doing powerlifting, go do CrossFit, go do jujitsu, go do play a sport, go running, go rucking, go do different things to make it where it's not monotonous and boring, so that it keeps you intrigued and keeps you doing it. But I think the other thing is don't be afraid to ask for help. Like find a qualified coach or trainer to get tips from and get guidance from. Back when I was working for 24-hour fitness, is like people would come in and like we would do fitness assessments on people, and that was like our sales pitch of like, hey, here's your measurements, here's your body fat, blah blah blah, let's go do a simple workout, and hey, here's our training packages, you want to buy some? And so like we had to go through this, and the biggest response that people always said is, well, I'm gonna go get in shape, and then I'm gonna go get in shape, and then I'll come back and get a trainer so that I can do better. I'm like,
yeah, right.
Like, what? And so don't be afraid to ask for help, even if it's at the beginning. If it's Like, whatever the case may be, go get help. Ask for help, ask for guidance, and then go do it on your own. But don't be afraid to ask for help, because we all need help in whatever way we can get it on X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks, man. We appreciate your time. Thanks so much for hanging out with us and being on the podcast. And if we can ever do anything to help you or love you or bless you, we're in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I love you, man. Thank you.
Love you guys.
Cheers.